Hey, my guest today is Tulsi Gabbard. I'm super excited to talk to her. She's got a unique experience of being a three deployment officer in the Army, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserve right now, four-term Congresswoman from Hawaii, which is a whole thing I want to talk about, just traveling back and forth to DC from Hawaii, having actual jet lag, and then running for president, which is only a few people in the world can actually talk about what it's like to run for president of the United States. And then now on a book tour, the wonderful book of For the Love of Country, Leave the Democratic Party Behind, which I've read every page and it's an excellent read. So thank you for
Thank
writing
you.
that
I
book.
really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know it took a while. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to talk to you. And I appreciate very much the focus of your podcast because I feel like I live more out of a suitcase and on the road than I do in any one single location.
I literally was, there's only a few people in the world that can talk about one being a deployed. I've had several Navy SEALs and people that have deployed and been in war. And we talk about traveling and being away from family. And then a congresswoman, though, I traveled to Hawaii for work and it's a 3 hour time change. But for you, it was a 6 hour from to DC, 11, 12 hour flight, depending on layovers,
Yeah.
and that was just so you can go to your job.
Oh yeah. And it was, when I was able to get back home, and I got back home at least a couple times a month throughout the 8 years that I served and had the privilege of representing Hawaii in Congress. Going home wasn't like, okay, kick your feet up and go hang out at the beach. It was my opportunity to actually be able to get out and around my district. So often I would jump off the plane back to Hawaii from DC, and then the very next morning would jump on the inter-island flights
Yeah.
to be able to get out to my district, because my district in Hawaii is the second district, which includes every island in the state. And so I would rotate through, instead of sitting in a stuffy office in downtown Honolulu, would actually get out to the different islands and the different communities in my district to be able to, hold town halls and go out and visit folks and see how I could better serve them there. But the flight back and forth to DC was, you get used to it because it becomes your commute. But I realized after I left Congress that I was jet lagged for 8 solid years,
Yeah.
constantly. You don't really dig your way out of that one.
Well, I was going to say, and going to all the different islands and then having really specific issues on each island. I mean,
Yes.
from Molokai to Lanai to Kauai, Maui. I mean, they're all unique
I
territories.
think it's what a lot of people don't realize, if they're visiting Hawaii for the first time, or, I mean, quite honestly, even a lot of people who've grown up on the island of Oahu
And
and not traveled much, not traveled much around the state, which is not uncommon. You don't really realize how every island has its very unique culture, unique history, and really this beautiful sense of pride in their identity as a people from that island is quite distinct and different from those from another island.
well, and then when you go to Maui, you must have an incredible amount of points. I mean, hotel
Usually
points.
what I would do, I'm grateful to have friends who I'm able to stay with in a lot of different places, and I would do so very often if I was going and overnighting on one of the neighbor islands. But usually what I would do is, take an early flight out, have a full day, and then fly back to Honolulu. When you travel a lot, you end up valuing sleeping in your own bed a lot more than if you're jumping from one hotel to the other. And so quite often I would go, if I'm flying home on a Friday, I would spend Saturday on one island, go home for the night, spend Sunday working on a different island, and then usually fly back to Washington, D.C. on a Monday.
Just another day,
Yeah, just another day.
another work trip. And then I was really excited to talk to you about uh, running for president. And the campaign stops and like the busing and how
Yeah.
how unique was that? And actually seeing different parts of the mainland.
Well, like I said, I'm used to being on the road a lot. So
Yeah.
that part, sure, it was unique and different, but it wasn't a kind of shocking experience that it might be to someone who wasn't constantly living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
It was really quite, it was honestly, it was the best part about that entire campaign experience, because it allowed me the opportunity to get to different parts of the country that a lot of people will never hear about in a news story,
Exactly.
but get to engage and have real conversations, real exchanges, share meals with, and spend time with people who have a unique story to tell, and unique challenges that they're struggling with, and different kinds of hopes and dreams that they want to see come about for our country. Really, when you get out and you travel, you realize across our country, you realize how big it is, how different and unique it is. Just like in Hawaii, each island has a different and unique culture, often in many states within that single state, like Hawaii. When you travel to different parts, you will experience that same kind of uniqueness and pride within a state itself, what to speak of as you go from state to state across the country. And the most beautiful and inspiring part about it was that as we went from rural towns and communities and farms to big cities and medium-sized towns, while each were unique, it was inspiring to feel that shared love of country and pride and appreciation for our freedoms in so many places. Not all, not everybody, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but it is there in many more people than the mainstream media may want you to realize. That sense of togetherness as Americans around the values that we hold dear.
I think it's interesting the media shows, I mean, you can name probably, well, you can name a whole bunch. Most people can probably name 5 Congress people on the right and 5 on the left, because that's who they see on
Maybe.
yeah, exactly,
There's
maybe.
a lot of
Yeah, I
them.
know there's 400 plus, right? So
Yeah,
you don't hear about the
435.
380,
Yeah,
390 because they don't get the press on either side of
yeah,
the media.
yeah,
So everyone thinks it's all like that or all like that. But then
yeah.
there's a lot of people like you that are actually
Well,
trying to
yeah,
bring
I
this
mean,
together.
it's there are too many politicians who are sucked into the Washington bubble, and they've forgotten what um that connection. They've allowed that connection to their local community or to everyday Americans across the country to be lost,
Yeah.
which is one of the big problems that we face, and why it's so important for people who are serving the American people in Washington to get out of Washington as much as humanly possible, so that you are constantly reminded of who are you there to serve. It's not the big party bosses in Washington. It's not the fancy lobbyists or the people who are anchors and pundits on TV whose opinions some people care about.
Right.
It's the people back home and in our communities who are working hard and trying to live their lives and hope to raise their kids in a peaceful and free society, and who look at a lot of people, unfortunately, too many in Washington, who are just so far out of touch, and you scratch your head and just wonder, like, what are you even thinking?
Yeah.
It becomes more about them and their power than it does actually about fulfilling their responsibility of service to the people. And that's a problem that we can change. That's a problem that we, the people, can and must affect through our elections.
Well, I think that's what to me, that's what your book was about. It was really kind
Yes.
of turning on your head and turning your brain on using critical thinking, saying, what's going on here? I mean, personally, I vote for whoever I think is going to do the best job. I don't vote by party ever, but, and I live in a super majority of Democrat neighborhood, but, it's interesting. Your book, was completely eye-opening. I hope so many people,
Glad.
both sides read it because,
I'm glad to hear that.
20 years as a Democrat and then why you left, how you think the Democratic lead's changing. I was probably the most shocking part for me was what they did to your dad
Yeah.
and how you wrote about that and how it affected you. And,
Yeah.
you know, what took so long to write the book? Was it changing constantly?
Well, I mean, I have had a few different books in mind that I plan to write, and writing a book takes a long time. This is the first book that I finished to completion, and when I could write op-eds about different issues, but really putting my heart and my experiences into this book and sharing, those experiences and how they shaped me and the things that I care about and the things that I'm most concerned about for our country, and what do we actually do about it. And so I was very intentional about every word that I wrote in that book, and I'm grateful to hear that you found it to be impactful and informative, and one that inspires that call to action.
Yeah. I mean, your decades of service to the country is that's I mean, that's the title, right? For love of country. It's an amazing
Yes,
thing. You know,
yes.
as you traveled around for the book now, and you're going to be on the road probably through November, I would say at least.
Hmm.
Um, what's been the most influential place you have visited so far? Whether it was Afghanistan, Iraq, any of the states?
That's a tough one to answer because every place that I have gone and I go, I am impacted in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, my first deployment to Iraq changed my life,
Yeah,
and it changed the world that I thought existed before, and seeing the world that actually existed, experiencing the cost of war, and it really changed the trajectory of my life and caused me to make different decisions that I never thought I would have made. It made it so I couldn't go back to the life that I had left behind of serving in the state legislature. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
right.
I just knew that I had experienced I'd gone through such life-changing experiences and been exposed to a harsh truth about the cost of war and who profits from our wars and who pay the price, and how too many of our politicians don't know and don't care to know and consider these facts and these harsh realities before they make the decision about whether or not our brothers and sisters in uniform are sent into harm's way and what the cost and consequences of that are. So um,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
suppose that could be the most impactful experience, but my second deployment was impactful in its own way. My third deployment impactful in its own way. Going and visiting different war zones, whether in uniform or as a civilian, going and visiting places like East Palestine, Ohio, or Lahaina on Maui in the wake of a disaster, and seeing, unfortunately, how our government has continued to fail the American people. I've also visited places like the Origin Factory in Maine, where they are reviving what it means to not only revive manufacturing in America, but their motto is grown and sewn in America, and making clothing and boots and things that where the materials are coming from America, and there are American hands on this every step of the way to the day that you get it in your mailbox. And how inspiring that is. There are so many incredibly inspiring stories across our country that I look forward to being able to continue to try to share about how we overcome adversity and remain rooted in our ideals in our country, and how these actions and these individuals who are just like everyone else are paving the way towards that brighter future for everybody.
I was gonna say, I've watched you, I follow you on your social, and you're very active on there. So I know some of the answers, but how do you stay in shape while on the road? I mean, it's really easy to eat snacks and just snack all day long and eat some bad food because there's no good food available. But how do you do it?
uh, Choose hunger over bad, crappy junk food.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to have that feeling of hunger. It's okay. And honestly, it's kind of good for you every now and then to give your body a break. So sometimes I'll just end up fasting, a couple of days a month at least. Sometimes it's by design, other times it's by circumstance where I'm just
Necessity,
like,
yeah.
no, I'm not going to go and eat a junk slice of pizza. I'll drink more water, but it's really just about making those micro choices every day, about nutrition and what I'm putting in my body. I generally try to pack, I'll drink a protein shake once or twice a day, and so I'll pre-pack before I go on a trip, one
Yeah.
serving of protein in a little Ziploc bag, so I can easily just grab one, throw it in a shaker cup, and add some water, and that'll take care of that. And nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Those are the three things that I try to remain disciplined on as I'm traveling or as I'm at home, because those are the things that I can affect. It'll look very different than if I'm at, my local community gym versus a hotel gym, which usually doesn't have very many good implements. But sometimes it's like, all right, all I can do is go for a walk or go for a jog today, and that's it. If I don't have weights, maybe I'll do some squats and push-ups and some pull-ups. But it's just it's more than what you do, is the fact that you are making those good choices every day, however and wherever possible,
I
and especially when you don't feel like it.
that's the key part, right?
That's
After
the
a
key.
long
That's the
day,
key.
actual jet lag, and
Yeah.
then you go, God, I still have to work out, or I still have to do
Yeah.
push-ups, or I have to do something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I often don't feel like it. I very often don't feel like it, but I always feel better after. And I know that. And that helps with the
well, and
discipline.
then I've seen you do a lot of cross training, and seeing you
Yeah.
do a little pound and ground uh,
Yep.
as part of your training, and just getting a sweat on.
Keeps it interesting.
You have to,
That's
right?
where I was in Milwaukee, and I could have gone to the hotel gym, and I remembered I have a friend there who is one of the best striking coaches in the UFC, and he's got a Muay Thai gym there. And so I called him up. He was out of town, but he had a couple of his coaches. We went and had a great workout, and it's something that I don't get to do very often, and it was so much fun.
Well, I remember traveling to the Big Island, and I went over to BJ Penn's place and trained there,
Yeah,
and I've never sweated so much in my life. I mean, it's
I bet.
95% humidity, but
Yeah,
it was just
yeah,
you walk in, you start sweating. So
yeah,
I think that's key. Just like you said, better's better. That's kind of what I go for, is
yeah.
as far as health and concern. What do you see traveling wise? I mean, what do you have coming up for the next 4 or 5 months until the election? Is it just hitting the book?
I'm traveling. It's not really, the book is a vehicle to deliver a message
Yeah,
that is very relevant and important and urgent for our country in this election specifically. There's a lot of broader themes and topics in there,
yeah,
but there is also a very specific call to action as it relates to this election and the choices that we have before us this year. So it's not a book tour for the sake of selling books. I
yeah.
am traveling the country and speaking to people and really boiling down the message that's in that book to one that sounds the alarm bells about the threats that we are facing to our freedom and our democracy, and reminding our fellow Americans about how, if you are frustrated or angered or disheartened by the direction our country is headed in, we, the people, are the only ones who can actually solve that and bring about that change. And we do so by being informed, responsible citizens and casting our vote. So I'm going to continue doing my best to deliver this message far and wide. There are still voters in this country who are undecided
Oh, sure.
about whether or not they will even vote at all. And if they do, who are they planning to vote for? And so I'm going to do my very best, because I love our country and I really care about saving and defending and upholding those values and principles that make us the greatest country in the world and that define us as who we are as Americans. And that's what's on the line in this election.
Completely agree. And you've talked a lot about the existential threats that are going on, and the nuclear. I don't think people think about the nuclear part of it, the nuclear war part of it. We get caught up in the border, and we get caught up in health and the bill, and legal terms. There's like a real threat of nuclear weapons. I mean,
There's a reason. There's a reason why nobody's thinking about it or talking about it. It's because the politicians who have pushed us to the brink of nuclear war right now, closer than ever we ever have been before, and who are heightening these tensions that have brought us to this place and continuing to wage regime change wars. They don't want us to think about the cost and consequences, because then we would tell them to stop. And we would actually hold them to account for putting our lives and the future of humanity at risk
yeah,
because of their actions. So there's a lot of distraction and deflection, and hey, look over here, or hey, we're defending democracy, but it's not actually what they're doing at all. They're making us all much less safe. And so we can't fall for their distraction tactics, and we have to continue to seek the truth and understand the very real consequences of these existential threats that they have imposed upon us,
yeah.
knowing that we have no shelter or protection should a nuclear war be sparked. They've got bunkers where they can continue to go and wage these wars from. We don't have any such protection. And so it's a reminder that they don't care about us again, which is why we've got to take action to do something about that.
In your book, you go over the Hawaii scare, is what I call it. Because I have friends and family that live on the islands. And
Yeah,
they got that text. That was real. I mean, I remember getting text from my niece going,
it's very real.
"Have you? What's going?" I mean, so if anybody doesn't remember, there was a mistake made with a text message that went out to the state of Hawaii saying missiles are incoming, get to shelter. That was a real thing. And all of a
Well, the
sudden, like
problem in the aftermath of that was that people focused on the mistake
versus,
and how it happened rather than the reality of why did everyone react in the way that they did, thinking that you have 15 minutes to live before the bomb hits and
yeah,
Hawaii is wiped off the face of the earth, and what that could spark afterward, knowing that North Korea has nuclear ballistic missile capability that could reach Hawaii. And now, years later, that was back in 2017. Here we
yeah,
are in 2024, their capabilities have only increased. And so, again, when you look at the political and the politicians' response, instead of it being a wake up call saying, oh man, yeah, okay, fine, that was a mistake, but it could have been real. And what has this exposed?
right.
That lack of preparedness and the fact that we are literally potentially just one mistake away from a nuclear attack here on our soil.
Which is just frightening. I mean, I live in Los Angeles,
Say the
so
least.
I know we're a top target. So it's like, well, how does the next president handle that? Whether it's Biden or Trump. I mean, how does that administration?
Exercise. Well, you know what you're going to get with Biden. It's going to get
Yeah,
worse. There's no question about that. President Trump has actually talked a lot about the dangers of nuclear war. I think he's probably the only prominent politician who's actually talked about it, or person seeking political office again. Uh, and it's been good to hear him speaking about it in a very real and very serious way
sure.
that it deserves, and how he will take action to prevent nuclear war. These are things that I have heard from him, and I know that he's very, very concerned about, and would exercise that leadership to do all he could to try to prevent that. Whereas President Biden is doing the opposite.
I agree. Try not to get too much politics, but yeah, I mean that's
This
it's
is the thing. This is the thing, though, is we can't separate politics from
yeah,
life. We can't separate politics from liberty, our ability to live in a free society. And I totally get it. Trust me. There are a lot of days when all I want to do is shut out everything that's happening in the country and turn off all the noise. There's a lot of political noise and chaos and divisiveness. But if we don't fulfill our role in our system of governance, in our democratic republic, then the people who are power hungry and who are pushing insane and destructive policies will remain in power, and that will impact our safety. It impacts our economic security. It impacts our ability to make sure our kids are educated in the best way possible to set them up for success. It impacts every single part of our lives. So as distasteful as it can be, we have to pay attention, and we have to do our part to make sure that we've got the right people in office who really care about the Constitution and really care about our country.
I think that's I think that's why you're so inspirational to people. You've served, right? I mean, you were homeschooled, so you have that
Yes.
that experience. The Army, Congress, running for president, which I would never want to be president just because I couldn't drive a car anymore. But um uh and going on the book tour, doing all this, and you're doing it to serve to better the country the best you see fit.
Yeah,
That's very unselfish, or it's just you're doing it because you think it's the best thing to do. So that's where it's inspirational, and I think
thank you.
I appreciate everything you're doing out there.
I am doing my part. We all
Yeah,
have to do our part. There's no single person who can single-handedly swoop in and make the kind of change that we need to see. Nor should we want that. In a democratic republic, we've got to recognize that the governed our government only exists with the consent of the governed, but that requires us to take action and to be informed in that action as we provide that consent, or we tell people, you're done, it's time to go home.
exactly. Well, for any of my listeners, what's the best way for them to follow you? Is it on X? Is it Instagram? Is it your website?
I'm on all the platforms. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got different content that we're putting out on different platforms. If you are into Twitter or X, you can follow me there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, as well as Truth Social, Rumble, and YouTube. We've got a few projects that I'm looking forward to launching soon that are a little bit more long form, a little bit
Nice.
more on the, talking about not only the issues of the day, but actually providing more of a deep dive on some of the headlines you might see, but sharing the truth that they don't want you to see or know about beyond the headlines. So I am at Tulsi Gabbard on all these different
Everything.
accounts, and you can follow me there. And you can get the book on Amazon, or as you can get a signed copy at tulsigabbard.com.
You're still doing I wasn't sure if you're still doing the signed books, but
Oh, trust me, I have signed probably close to 10,000 books at this point.
well, I got one of them, so
There you go.
exactly. I know she actually signs some people, so
Yes.
enjoy them. I'm going to do a giveaway then. I'll make sure to do a giveaway for a couple of books for
Awesome.
something in there. So
Very
I
cool.
appreciate the time so much.
It's good to finally do this. I know you've been very patient.
That's what we do, right? It's life.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tulsi.
Nice to meet you.
Have a great year. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Aloha. Perfect.
Yeah, that worked out great. Thanks, Tulsi. I knew you had a heart out, so
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
yep. Enjoy your time. I appreciate it. Everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tulsi. Bye bye.